Greetings, Jeremy.
Hi, how are you?
Decent.
Good.
Okay, we're live on YouTube. Good evening, everybody. We're live on YouTube. I just tested positive for COVID this afternoon, so be thankful this is Zoom and not an in-person meet. I will go ahead and start with our land acknowledgement. And I forgot to bring up our picture. Well, just imagine our picture, which is a nice picture of at Quality Longhouse. We acknowledge the people on whose land we live, the Atquality Calapuyans, also known as the Tualatin Band of Calapuyans, the first inhabitants of Washington County. We are grateful for the land we're on, Calapuyan land. Signers of the Willamette Valley Treaty of 1855 were removed from their homelands to the Grand Ronde Indian Reservation. Today, their descendants are tribal members of Grand Ronde and Celeste tribes carrying on the traditions and cultures of their ancestors. We acknowledge and express gratitude for the ancestors of this place, and we recognize that we are here because of the sacrifices forced upon them. In remembering these communities, we honor their legacy, their lives, and their continuation in our community. I invite all of us to reflect on the role government has played in the painful colonial history and reflect as well on the resilience and healing of the Indigenous land and communities. We invite everyone to collaborate and work together with the tribes to take care of the land and water and the people who inhabit these spaces. We're going to do our service provider updates pretty quickly, and we may interrupt them because at around 7:10, Sheriff Garrett and the new undersheriff, and I keep forgetting her name, yes, will be joining us just for a few minutes to say hello, maybe give us a brief message. So keep an eye on the attendee panel and let them in when they show up. I'm not going to do too much talking. I just tested this afternoon and I'm not feeling horrible, but I'm kind of feeling worse by the minute. So who do we have? We don't have TBF&R or Tualatin Hills Park and Rec. I know that. Justin, why don't you go ahead and give us a water update?
Happy to do so. Thanks everyone for having me. I'm Justin Dyke with Tualatin Valley Water District. We'll keep it short tonight. We're going to be doing a winter prep webinar for folks interested in getting their homes and their plumbing ready for the cold season that's quick approaching. That will be on Wednesday, October the 25th at noon. So we will be sending out emails with information on how to join that. We'll be covering a lot of things from some subject matter experts, like how to prepare your irrigation systems, your backflow devices, what tips we have for wrapping your plumbing and so forth to make sure that there's no unexpected frozen pipes, water leaks, and all the rest of those things that can somehow happen every winter. So once again, I'll put a link into the chat, but on the October 25th at noon, it will be winter prep. It will be recorded on and posted to our YouTube as well for anyone who can't join at that time. Another reminder is that we are in the beginning stages of our flushing season. We will be starting 2 separate flushing crews this year to proactively flush water mains from naturally occurring sediment in the water system. One will start up in the CPO 1 area. The other will start in Cooper Mountain. They will work down the valley towards each other. So I will post a second link into the chat for a interactive map we have for our flushing areas. Sometime by the end of this month, we will then be updating it. You will see sections of the map that will change colors from blue to purple to green as our crews are progressing. So if you ever see any signs in your neighborhood that say water system flushing occurring nearby, it'll have information to help you get to that website, learn more about what we do with our water system flushing and why we do it. And if you have any questions about that, how you can get a hold of us. So That's our updates for the month, and we'll take any comments or questions or engage in the chat.
Yeah, Justin, I got one. So on Nextdoor, the issue of the price of water keeps coming up. Do you have any open houses for the public planned for the next few months?
Not specifically on rates or costs. We wrap those all up at the end of the end of August and early September, as we went into the official rate adoption. That was on September 20th by our elected board. So we don't have anything like that right now. Typically this time of year, when folks are making comments about their costs of water, they kind of fall into I don't want to say a trap, but it's a tough argument because we just announced our rates that will be increasing effective November 1st. But right now, people are getting their summer high usage water bills from us. So water that was used to irrigate, fill pools, recreational uses, all of those things in the August, September hot months, those water bills are starting to hit mailboxes and email inboxes right now. So it's something we work with our staff on how to prepare them to answer those questions. So the best I would say is if folks are having questions or concerns about the cost of their water bill, please call our office or send us an email. What we do first is we look at your water usage, your consumption from this last billing cycle compared to the same billing cycle 1 year ago or other years in the past to see if it's similar or if there's been any spikes in usage that might indicate a leak in plumbing or any other usage changes. And we can figure out from there if the rates are a factor in that or not. But as of right now, the rates don't take effect for about another month until November 1st. So high bills right now will be purely based on usage. High bills that are after November 1st would be blended rates. So water consumed during the month of October is at the existing rates, and water consumed after November 1st is at the new rate. So there will be a period of billing cycles where there'll be multiple different water rates. Again, it might be easiest for folks just to contact us, but as of right now, it's all summer usage.
Okay. Also along that line, is there any plan to go to a monthly billing cycle rather than a bi-monthly billing cycle?
Yes, there is. So we have a pilot area right now in our district, not exactly in the CPO 1 area. I believe it's in CPO 7 just by chance, but it is a small subdivision. I believe 500 homes or so. It's a couple subdivisions that are right next to each other. We are doing manual monthly reads, and we are testing it with our new billing system to start working out the kinks and seeing how it goes and trying to honestly identify any flaws and how we would do that. It's chunking up our fixed rates. It's changing how we do other things like leak adjustments and how we check consumption to see if a customer may have a leak. So there's a lot of stuff in that change to monthly billing and procedurally that we're testing right now. And we're trying to determine how we could roll that out further. We are pursuing new technology called automated metering infrastructure that would have water meters with long-lasting lithium batteries on them that could transmit the meter read signal via cellular network. And we'd be able to get much faster data and then a much easier switch to monthly billing. But that is a large infrastructure investment. So there's a lot of things in play. The end goal is to get to monthly billing when we can find a way to do it reliably.
Wonderful. So right now the meters are read by an employee going close to the meter and reading it electronically?
It depends. That type of technology you're talking about, Bruce, we have that throughout our Metzger service area. It is a technology that's fading away. It's not supported by the manufacturers anymore. Essentially, in those instances, you can get an operator in a regular pickup truck and they can just drive really slowly, like 5 miles an hour down the street and pick up all the reads. We do have a significant portion of our district where meters are still read manually. That is the most reliable way to do it, but it is labor intensive and it is what keeps us at a bi-monthly billing cycle because we'd have to hire twice as many meter readers to read everything twice as often.
All right, thank you.
Well, Justin, I just see that Sheriff Garrett has joined the meeting. And I would like to welcome you. Thank you very much for stopping in. I just let folks know today I tested positive for COVID. So you're all glad I'm safe at home. Yeah. Please let us know if you have a little message for us or anything. I've certainly been following your retirement. I applaud you for wanting to take care of your mom. And we're really looking forward to meeting your replacement.
Yes, Virginia.
I'm keeping an eye open and oh, there she is. She's coming in.
Well, while she's coming in, I'll just say hello to you and to Fran and Carol, and the mayor of Bonnie Slope. Always good to see you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
For being here.
So, do you have any messages in parting? You're going to be there till November 1st, is that correct?
November 30th. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, 30th. Great. Not trying to get rid of you early.
No, I understand.
Not at all.
You know, what I would want to share with you is that first of all, thank you for being so gracious and with us and supportive of us and our staff over the years. I while you know, lost my father in June, mom's just at a point where I just need to pivot, and I'm cutting my last term short by a year, and I have mixed emotions about that. I also recognize change in leadership is good, and it gave me an opportunity to be thoughtful about a recommendation to the board. As the chair, I will say the chair said something, she put it in terms that really resonated with me earlier in last week, and that the sheriff is an elected official who doesn't have staff really to execute policy and to run personnel like a mayor or a city councilor or a commissioner or the chair does. The sheriff is a department director, if you will, in the kind of terminology we can probably all understand. You know, the buck does stop with me, and the sheriff is involved in that daily operations and decision-making process. Now, no sheriff wants to overdo that, right? We have excellent leaders and staff to get the work done, but it matters who's coming into the office, and that person has to be, in my view, has to be somebody who is well-versed in the profession, not just in enforcement, but in the jail, not just in the jail, but in enforcement. And we're fortunate to have Under Sheriff Massey here, who has enormous experience in the jail, is dual certified in policing as well, and has about a couple of years now in policing. She's been drinking from a fire hose and is coming up to speed as quickly as I came up to speed in the jail. I mean, I just remember what that was like. And the board sees those qualifications. They recognize that she has knowledge, skills, and abilities that are impressive, and voted unanimously to appoint her. And you know, as the elected sheriff, still an elected politician, is part of the job I signed up for. I would just urge CPO1 to also support her. She's the right person for this job going forward, and plans to run, and is in fact running come the May election. I also want you to know that I cannot thank you enough for your service to your community, and for hosting people like Detective Chester today to share kind of what he knows in his specialty in his lane, and also, frankly, to keep us accountable. That is something our CPOs do for us, right? They ask hard questions, and we know that we have enormously professional staff who work hard to do the right thing every day, but this work involves humans, and humans are imperfect, and we sometimes make mistakes. And that happens from time to time, and when we do that, we learn the best we can from them. And then we brush ourselves off, we ask for some grace, and we keep charging forward to be better about our work where we need to be better. So thank you for all your support. And I would just ask Under Sheriff Massey, if that's okay with you, Virginia, if I could just see if she has a couple things to share.
Yeah. I didn't quite hear the last thing you said, if it was going to be okay with me.
Yeah, it's fine. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Sheriff Massey.
Hi. First of all, thank you so much for having us and for giving me the opportunity to introduce myself and take a few moments for you to get to know a little bit about me. Just a bit about myself. I am from Eugene originally, and I joined the Navy shortly after I left high school, and I did that for about 9 years. And when I got out of the Navy, I had an opportunity to join the Norfolk Sheriff's Office in Virginia, which is where my last duty station was. I spent 4 years there before I came back home to take care of my parents and found my home at the Washington County Sheriff's Office. So I've been there for 19 years. And in that time, I have been given so many incredible opportunities to do different things. I did start out in the jail, and I worked every certified position within the jail. I was afforded the opportunity to serve as the recruitment sergeant for a couple of years, which was my favorite position that I've held so far. And then the sheriff gave me the opportunity to go down to the police academy much later in my career and do the 16-week academy down there, and then come back and do the same training that our recruits do as the patrol commander. So it was an adventure, and I think the sheriff got it right. I have been drinking out of a fire hose for a couple of years. I think the thing that I'm most proud of is that I have an incredible spouse who is a high school teacher and 3 awesome daughters. And so they are my primary support system. They've been through all of these adventures with me. And I'm pretty excited to share the next season with them as well. I have some pretty big boots, shoes, whatever to fill. Pat has been investing in me and coaching and mentoring me for a really long time. And so you can see that I will be his shadow for every minute that I can have before he goes to take care of his family. But please know that my commitment to service you will not see a change in that service from Pat. I have spent my whole life serving in some capacity, and I'm very excited about this new opportunity.
Well, welcome to CPO 1. I'm glad to hear that you've been here for a while, because Washington County is a strange animal. And it is, with all of our urban unincorporated areas and the large ESPD that serves us. It's not your typical county sheriff job. And we often have problems with people coming in from outside who it takes them a while to figure it out. So
Right.
at least you're ahead of the game that way. And we will definitely be having you back. We're not going to be throwing any hardballs tonight. But it was a total coincidence that we happened to have a all sheriff program tonight. We're looking forward to that. Bruce and I have been talking about this kind of a program for some time. Myself personally, I'm interested in hearing about the Broadcastify stuff, because I only got onto Zoom because Twitter, because there was public safety stuff that I could share with my readers and my constituents, and now it's not so much, but that's something that's sort of near and dear to my heart. So we're looking forward to that and to the rest of the program. I don't know if you can stick around. You're certainly welcome to. Bruce, your hand is up.
Yes.
I'm happy to answer any questions.
Bruce.
Yes, I was waiting for Sheriff Massey to finish.
Yeah.
I want to give some credit to Sheriff Garrett for his innovation, and I believe it was during your time in office that the mental health response team was put into action. Am I correct on that?
That's a great question, Bruce. It was being piloted when I started as sheriff. We had one deputy and clinician, and we made it a program in my first term.
Good. And I ran into some city police from Tualatin and Tigard who were part of their mental health response team. And the point I wanted to make is that you have been innovative and you have influenced the quality of law enforcement throughout the county by your leadership. And that really is significant. And I am grateful for that influence that you've had.
We all are. We only wish that there were better facilities for the folks that are undergoing mental challenges. And maybe some of this stuff from the legislature will begin to make a difference. But an awful lot of the time you're reading reports about people who are doing all these wild and crazy things, and you think they can't be mentally stable. That it just doesn't work that way. And so the sensitivity to understand that going into a situation, but like I said, let's get more places for those folks to go and get help. I don't know, do any of our attendees have questions right away? Or like I said, you guys are both welcome to stay. It might be kind of interesting because our topic is, oh, that's the wrong one. Wait. Oh, domestic extremism in Washington County, yes. And Detective Chadester, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, is going to fill us in on that. It's been something we've been interested in for a while. And I know Bruce, with his position on the advisory committee, have definitely delved into it. So
the ESPD, the Sheriff's Advisory Committee. And I want to let viewers know that this is the domestic extremism is an important topic to us because the CPO 1 and 7 were having a voter forum, and we had a white supremacist come and disrupt the meeting, and we had to have the sheriff send a deputy out to deal with this individual and his wife. So this
not
is
tonight. That was
no. This was a few years.
Okay.
This was a few years ago.
Yes, it was. I was there.
And so I think it behooves us to be paying attention and to learn what we can about those things that we can do. So
yeah. Well, I have a little bit of CPO business to get through. And I did not see any other.
I've got a question for the sheriff here from a.
Oh, okay, great.
Well, since you asked, I hope I joined late and I hope it wasn't already covered, but I am just curious with a lot of the businesses in Portland closing down because of all, the crime that they're experiencing, whether it's, like really institutional organized crime or not. And I'm just curious if we think that's going to sort of export that, out here, if we're already seeing it or not, and, just maybe what your thoughts are on what to expect and what you can do about it.
Thank you for the question. I have two thoughts in my answer. The first one is about people who are responsible for those retail thefts, and that is what they're not enforcing in Multnomah County. What I mean by that, they're not charging crimes. Multnomah County has a huge DA's office, huge county. They're frankly not charging the crimes in many cases where there are arrests. And because of that, then people who are out committing retail theft are roaming freely across a very large metropolitan area, a very mobile metropolitan area. And of course, we are seeing some of those individuals responsible for those crimes in Multnomah County come to Washington County. I don't want to overplay that card. I don't want to blame Multnomah County on our crime, but there is some element of truth to that. Number two, we have a staffing crisis in our jail. So we are unable to hold everybody who needs to be held, frankly. We're taking steps to move in the right direction to increase our applicants coming in the front door. And we've hired and are working with a marketing firm that is paying off. Early returns are very, very encouraging. We have an open house later this month on the 21st, and we have like 90 people registered to come to our career open house. we're gonna get back to a fully staffed jail, but until we get there, there's some theft suspects that unfortunately we're not able to maintain custody in a safe way. And if we can't do it safely, then we can't keep them in jail. So that I've heard Under Sheriff Massey say that's her number one goal, is to focus on getting our jail staffed up. So yeah, the retail theft, it's an issue here. It's not like it is in Multnomah County, and we're taking steps both on the enforcement side and the jail side to keep it from getting that bad, as bad as it is in Multnomah County.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you're on mute, Virginia.
We have another member that has a question. Let's see, Johnny. I don't know. Yeah, Johnny, why don't you let's get you unmuted so you can ask your question. You should be live, Johnny.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I would just like to know why you're not faded than a hoe, faded than a hoe, faded than a hoe, faded than a hoe, faded than a hoe. Dabbington City, shall we?
Okay.
Does it go much further than that? You feel me?
Okay, let's move on.
I know this at Bruce and Virginia. Thank you for inviting Under Sheriff Massey to stay. I'm still at the office and have some work to wrap up. And I know Under Sheriff Massey has some youngsters at home too. So thank you for that. And I don't want to steal Jeremy Chester's all of his time, but I appreciate your hospitality.
I was just reading about the Zoom bombing that happened at the Beaverton City Council. And well, we had that at our very first Zoom meeting, CPO 1, after we resumed after COVID hit. And we had to, the county had to change some policies about how to run a Zoom meeting. So I don't know what that was about. I hope he gets the help he needs. Okay, I'm going to go and resume the CPO part of the meeting. We recorded our September meeting. Whoops, I don't want to send that to everyone. And there's a link to that. It was an interesting meeting. I think all of our meetings are pretty interesting. And please pardon my croaking. I just tested positive for COVID and it's already affecting me a little bit. We wrote about several things in the CPO news segment of Cedar Mill News, and there's the link to that. The October 17th Board of Commissioners work session will have a presentation from OEICE about their updated plans for our system, for the CPO system. They came in May, I believe it was May, before the Board of Commissioners work session, and we're kind of basically told to go back to the drawing board and bring a better proposal. And the work session agenda is not up on the web yet, although I saw that the regular meeting agenda is up, but that's the page that you can go to find the agenda once it's published. Bruce and I, I'm sure, will be watching with bated breath, and then everybody else that's excited about community participation. Good night. Thank you for coming. We'll probably be watching. Yeah, thank you, Sheriff Garrett. And I still haven't got his name in my head yet, Caprice. Anyway, So now we are at the part of open mic. If anyone, any CPO members have anything they want to let us know about, please do. Any hands up? Don't see anything. Okay.
Fran has something.
Yeah, Fran, hey, yeah, lots going on. Unmute.
Okay, so you're asking for general input from the community, right here? I want to make sure I'm not interceding. So I am on the board of Tree Keepers of Washington County, but I'm also on the Washington County Goal 5 Significant Natural Resource Inventory Project Update. And so Michelle, people have been asking me about what's going on with the Technical Advisory Committee there. And it was supposed to be meeting in October, but it'll be meeting in November. So in about a week or so, we can take a look at the website and see when the next meeting occurs. They do not have public input at the meeting, but you can submit testimony in advance. So I'll put the website information in the chat. And also, I would at some point in the future like to talk about some great mapping is happening in lots of different groups, regional, state, et cetera, like wildlife corridors and connectivity and stuff, which I think would be of interest to I should say, I would like to ask the community if they're interested in that kind of information. It's very handy. So
Fran works very hard on behalf of all of our natural resources, the animals and the plants, the trees, the air, the water, and we really appreciate her work. So, and I'm sure you can get in contact with her if you're interested in being involved.
I'll put both my contact information or our website and the inventory information, the Goal 5 work on the web on there. Okay.
To be a little bit more clear, the Goal 5 work is helping the county develop clear and objective standards for protecting significant natural resources. And Goal 5 was the Oregon goal that addressed the natural resource protections.
I'll share my screen for a moment because I wrote about all of this in the Washington County News. So there's a focus look online open house, Friday, October 20th to Friday, November 10th. And then there's one in-person SNR open house on Tuesday, October 24th. So that is in, and I'll post a link to that.
Yeah, I just put that on there. Yes, thank you for clarifying, Virginia, that yes, the community engagement is happening in October, right?
Yeah, at least the beginning of it. I hope there's going to be more.
Yes, we need the community to speak up about how they feel about this issue. So, and the state definitely has Washington County on their under a microscope. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So we'll get a lot of support.
It's amazing. You guys have been so diligent. We appreciate you. Okay.
There's a question.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would need too much background that we don't have time for tonight, so I have to go read up on what all this is. But is a significant natural resource only in undeveloped lands or urban growth boundary lands, or does it include like a really nice large tree in someone's private property, or what else?
It's the undeveloped land inside the urban growth boundary.
Inside the boundary.
In unincorporated Washington County. So the cities take care of theirs and the county takes care of ours. Now, the reason Fran said that the state has this under a microscope is that if Washington County's codes are now developed and viewed to be in compliance, then that will have a ripple effect on other municipalities, similar codes for protecting wildlands.
Right.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks for all the clarification, everybody.
Yeah, this is the time. if you have any feelings about natural resources, wanting to protect the land and air and water. And it was, Fran contributed an interesting article to the October Cedar Mill News, mentioning something that I don't think gets enough play, which is tree-friendly development. It is possible to build more dwellings without shaving the land. And the developers resist it because it might cost them a little more. It might slightly cut down on the number of houses. But if we're really going to address the climate crisis, we're going to have to think about new ways of building dwellings and being prepared for more people. So thank you, Fran, for that. I don't know where Bruce went, but I think we can probably get on with the rest of the program. Jeremy Chadester, a detective with the Washington County Sheriff's Office Investigations Division, FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force. Wow, that's a handful. Can you rattle that off right off the top of your head? We'd like to welcome you to tell us what you know about domestic terrorism in Washington County. Thank you very much for joining us. It's a challenging topic.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So I've been in law enforcement for just about 20 years. It'll be 20 in February, and have been a detective for half of that time. And I've been working over on the Joint Terrorism Task Force for the last 7 years. So it's been a big chunk of time as a detective that I've been there. And I have a short presentation tonight. I apologize. I will try to keep it short. When I give it, it's usually about 2 hours. So I will definitely keep it a lot shorter than that. But let me get my screen to share and go from there.
Well, we're a little bit ahead of schedule, so feel free to fill us in on what you think we need to know.
Okay, can you see my screen all right?
Not yet. Maybe I need to remove the pin. I can make you a co-host. That might help.
Looks like, here we go.
You should be able as a panelist. There we go.
Okay. All right, you got it all right now?
We can see your computer screen. If you want to hit play
There we go.
slideshow, that's fine. There we go. Yay, thank you.
All right, so I've kind of changed this up to what I have typically done in the past. And I think there's a good reason for it, but I'll just kind of start out with kind of where we are right now. But I would like to go back in time a little bit to kind of where we started with some of these groups and why they are the way that they are right now. So domestic terrorism categories, there are several, and basically it's anarchists, violent extremists, animal rights extremists, militia extremists, white supremacists, lone wolf attacks. WMD stands for weapons of mass destruction. So those are any type of explosive devices, things like that. So just to kind of give you an idea of what I look at. Also incels, which are kind of lone wolf attacks with ideology that is based on basically hatred of women. It stands for involuntary celibates, and of course anti-abortion extremists. So those are the kind of categories I work. And I also want to throw this out. A lot of people know this already, but there are no domestic terrorism groups as an example of international terrorist groups like ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah, Hamas. So there are no types of groups. So I don't investigate these groups. I investigate individuals with that group ideology, if that makes sense. And one of the things I also like to do is talk about what is the definition of terrorism. And it's basically the use of force or violence to commit an act of violence to intimidate or coerce somebody because of a political or social objective. And as you can imagine, that can be a wide range of things. I would say political, social objectives, including religious objectives. And this was kind of a startling statement and result that I just found out about not too long ago. So in 2021, there were 18 different states that saw terrorism attacks or planned attacks. The highest concentration of incidents occurring in and around was Portland, Oregon, which tracked 18 terrorist plots in 2021. The next highest number of terrorist incidents was in New York City, and there were 7 attacks. So just for context, I wanted to put the population of the Portland metro area, and of course, this is an approximate estimate because I used basically Washington County, Clackamas County, and Multnomah County to come up with that 2 million, as opposed to the population of New York, which is 19 million. So it's kind of a, I don't know, humbling, disappointing. There's a lot of mixed emotions for me when I see that statistic. The good thing is, in 2021, we didn't have a significant loss of lives in the Portland metro area, but there were many, many attacks. And of course, 2021 was after 2020 when we had so many of the riots and really civil unrest going on. I hate to start out presentations with statistics, but I just wanted to kind of establish why this is relevant to Washington County, because that statistics absolutely did cover Washington County, Multnomah County, and Clackamas County. And these are just some of the types of targets between 2020 and 21. Obviously, in 2020, we had a huge amount of demonstrations and civil unrest. And then 2020, it balanced back a little bit, but I think in the last 10 years, Portland has always ranked in the top 6 cities to have attacks or planned terrorist attacks. So this is where my presentation takes a little bit of a turn that I think is important to really understand why we see the extremists that we see in Portland. So a lot of times when I'm talking to especially newer police officers, I talk about Antifa, which stands for anti-fascist. And I start out my presentation with saying, you know, I'm not a huge fan of fascists. I'm also not a huge fan of Nazis and white supremacy. And just leaving it at that, I really am supportive of Antifa because they do promote anti-fascism. They're anti-Nazi, which I can get behind, and anti-racist, which I also can get behind. And this is where Antifa really started. I don't know if you can see to the right of my screen, the flag that's in German. There's an image on the right and the image on the left. So the image on the right is a anti-fascist group meeting in Europe while Hitler was killing many millions of people. And the anarchism really emerged around that time to fight Germany and fight the Nazis. So they have kind of, in my view, a righteous start and a righteous cause that they kind of got mobilized behind. And it's something that current Antifa people and ideology kind of falls back to, is that fight against Nazis and fascist governments. So what we see today, of course, is Rose City Antifa, which there are members from Washington County, Multnomah County, Clackamas County. And I don't know if you can see this image on my lower left screen, but it says Anti-Fascist Action, which is an exact replica of that German Anti-Fascist Action flag, including the flag, the saying, obviously it's in German, and the other one. But you can see how they pull from the roots of anti-fascism to their perceived fascist government and Nazi and being anti-Nazi. So I think that that's important to kind of establish. I'm not saying that I agree with anti-fascists or their violence that they cause, the people that they hurt, the damage to buildings and businesses. I'm not saying that at all, but it is something that that's how they recruit people, is because they talk about the 1930s and go back to that historical fight against Nazi Germany. And it inspires people, it gets them engaged. And then through time, they kind of radicalize their members to become more and more engaged in violence. So it's just something that I think is important to really understand what's behind their causes and why that they do the things that they do. I absolutely don't agree with any type of extremism that causes damage or hurts people. And that's really the defining difference between a belief system and then a violent extremist group, or individuals that believe in that ideology. And of course, we see white supremacists on the right. The upper right picture is Patriot Front, who have come to Washington County and done a lot of firing, some damage, but not a lot of violence that we have heard of yet. There's also a new up-and-coming white supremacist group called Rose City Nationalist Club, and they are more extreme, believe in more violence, train with weapons, and these white supremacist groups also fall back to their ideology with Hitler. Obviously, traditionally with white supremacists, you see a lot of swastikas and that ideology. Patriot Front is very much like Hitler Youth. They kind of mold their group and cause behind Hitler's Youth, even replicating a lot of the uniforms that Hitler Youth had. And so I just think that that's an interesting dynamic between especially anarchists, anti-fascist anarchists, and white supremacists like Patriot Front and Rose City Nationalists. So the other thing that I think is important to recognize is really starting in 2017, we saw the emergence of Patriot Prayer and the Proud Boys in Portland. And obviously, since 2017, we've seen a lot of violence and disruption and just a lot of unrest and violence, not only with the opposition, which would be the anti-fascist anarchists, which absolutely believe that Patriot Front and Proud Boys are Nazis. And so that's been the antagonistic kind of relationship that those two have had, and really why Portland is known around the country for its violence between Patriot Prayer, Proud Boys, and anarchists. Portland has had anarchists for a long time, and they've had white supremacists for a long time. So you can see over the years how this has really exploded, especially after 2016-ish, when things got substantially worse. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was really the relationship between Proud Boys and white supremacists. I don't know if you see this upper left picture here. It's Tario, which is the leader or the president of Proud Boys, and Joe Biggs and several other people marching down the Hawthorne Bridge in Portland. That's kind of a notorious picture of them. And the reason why I bring this up is because I've spoken many times to members of Proud Boys, anarchists, and other people. And Proud Boys are interesting because they don't openly promote racist ideology. However, they attract a lot of racist ideology through their members, and a lot of times they're younger members. So something that's happened recently is a few of the Proud Boys have broken off because they wanted the people that broke off wanted a more racist platform, and this is when Proud Boys, I think, were trying to really decrease the amount of negative coverage on them. So they really kicked out a couple of guys, and those guys started Rose City Nationalists. And the other group I wanted to bring up is 3N, which is the Northwest Nationalist Network, which is a network along the Northwest from about Sacramento to Seattle that has different groups like Rose City Nationalists, a part of a bigger network. So they communicate, they train together, they share ideology, they share platforms like Stormfront and other social media and web pages for recruitment, radicalization, and things like that. So I am not saying that Proud Boys is a white supremacist organization. However, they absolutely do attract white supremacists to their organization. And sometimes they kick those members out. Sometimes they embrace those members. So it's really hard to label Proud Boys as one way or the other. I would say that their Proud Boys ideology and their belief system is similar to a white supremacist organization. They just don't want to be labeled a white supremacist organization. They want to be labeled how they label themselves. White supremacists really differentiate themselves by being proud of their Nazi beliefs, their white supremacist beliefs. So the upper right picture is Rose City Nationalists. The lower right picture are members of 3N, which is that Northwest Nationalist Network. And the bottom middle picture is also part of 3N and the base. And the base is more of an international white supremacist group that has significant funding. And I would say substantially more violent. They absolutely train with guns. They train to fight. They're very into mixed martial arts. But you can see this dynamic where the influx of white supremacy and the overtness of white supremacy has become directly antagonistic with anarchists and anti-fascists in Portland. The other thing I wanted to kind of just, this is part of the education that I share with a lot of different people, and the symbolism is important, I think. You see the Rose City Nationalists are very much, the Iron Cross is very reminiscent of Nazi Germany. The black, where the 3N is, that's called a black sun. And those symbolisms and labels or symbols, if you will, are very they're intentional. And I also like to point out, so the top part of this slide is the base, Adam Waffen, which are white supremacist groups, along with Rose City nationalists. And you see the three kind of marks that almost look like arrows. And then on the bottom of the screen, you see this three actual arrows pointed at an angle. And those are symbols of anarchists with anti-fascist ideology. You can also see the flowers kind of around the circle, which is also reminiscent of Proud Boys have those as well. They're just in yellow. So they really feed off each other's ideology. They feed off each other's symbolism. And it's important to recognize the difference between those, in my opinion, to really understand who you're dealing with and what their belief system is. So that's just a really short brief on kind of the extremism and the problems that we have in Portland right now. One of the things that I do typically is I have communication and education with law enforcement, and law enforcement at all different stages. So I teach a lot of, in our new recruit academy, I have a couple-hour class that I talk about extremism, kind of what to look for. And then I also talk about international extremism like ISIS and Al-Qaeda and Hezbollah and Hamas. I speak with school resource officers, mental health response teams. I've done multiple trainings with them. I recently just did a crisis negotiation team. So that if somebody was, going through a mental health crisis and espousing extremist rhetoric, that they would be able to recognize that and be able to deal with that appropriately. I also routinely go to patrol briefings. I'm a part of several threat assessment groups, and then fusion centers. I don't know if you guys know what those are, but fusion centers are constantly disseminating usually law enforcement sensitive information, but it's basically a information sharing group that talks about different trends and kind of what I just talked about. And of course, there are community groups like this one that I present to, as well as educating businesses. A lot of times large businesses like Intel, Nike, Textronics, kind of the major businesses around Washington County and the metropolitan area, but especially in Washington County. And then obviously, I have these discussions with community and political leaders. So I just was in a meeting where the several political leaders, including the governor, was there for a briefing on not only international problems, but domestic terrorism problems. So with that, that's kind of concludes my abbreviated version on domestic extremism and terrorism in the area. There's my contact information if you want. I will stop sharing my screen here in a second. But are there any questions?
Back when there was a lot of violence in Portland, I had a very brief interaction with someone who said he was a Proud Boy, who said that someone else that was kind of making news was not a real Proud Boy. And I kind of got scared, but I asked him why. And he, did the Proud Boys have to go through some kind of initiation, or did they have to do something to prove that they were Proud Boys? And that's what he was sort of indicating. I chickened out very quickly because I didn't really want to engage with the guy. But I thought that was interesting. Is that something that you've encountered, that to be a real Proud Boy, their members have to go, sort of like, I don't know, hurt somebody or something?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. They have different levels of Proud Boys. There are a number of different things that they have to do. I don't know how to say this in a more political way,
PC.
but it's it's very similar to traditional kind of old school gang initiation, where they and one of the things that you can Google this, one of the Proud Boys things that you have to do is name 3 breakfast cereals while you're getting punched and kicked. And so it's kind of like juvenile middle school boy stupidness in some ways.
Yeah,
And kind of also like gang initiation in a lot of ways.
to sort
So-
of reduce their sensitivity to humanity.
Well, and it's just like every other group. In any group, you're going to have some dissension. You're going to have some believers that are much more extreme and willing to do much more violent things than other members. So, but I did want to explain kind of this dynamic between Proud Boys and white supremacists, and how a lot of people will label them a certain way or not label them a certain way. And I do think it is important to understand that there are absolutely members in all of these groups that I mentioned that are more extreme than others. And one of the things that I also want to promote is how to decrease violence is partly due to our really understanding of why they are doing the things that they are doing. You know, anarchists believe that they're fighting a Nazi government, and whether that is, I mean, that is their perception, that they are, when they fight with police and do things to police, they are fighting a Nazi fascist government. When they are fighting Proud Boys, they are fighting a Nazi racist group. And clearly when they are fighting true white supremacists, that's their belief, and that's what they get behind. And Proud Boys and Patriot Prayer and many white right-wing groups believe that law enforcement is not doing enough, that they have to step in like the militias when America was being created, when we were resisting the British and dependent upon militias to fight wars. And they absolutely fall back to that ideology, saying we need to create these militias and we need to create this response to anarchists and other people that are engaged in violence, because it's our right as Americans, it's our duty as Americans. We are patriots because of that. And so they really truly get behind these causes that are decades, sometimes hundreds of years old, and fall back to those belief systems, which motivates them and gives them kind of their righteous justification for their actions.
That kind of leads me into my second question, which is my suspicion is that many of these folks are previous military, and they're just finding their civilian life too boring. And they sort of crave the excitement that they, and the coherence that they felt when they were in the military. Is that anything that you've observed, or am I making this up?
I think that could be absolutely true with some people. I don't know if most of them are law enforcement or not law enforcement, military, or if they wanted to be in the military and couldn't. I think that there's just honestly, there's a pretty broad range of people that join for a lot of different reasons. And people join these groups because it's human nature to want to feel special, to feel like you belong to something, that you have a cause to live for, that you have that righteous justification to motivate yourself. So that's I think just a natural human response that almost everybody gets through one way or the other. Sometimes people get it through their work. Sometimes people get it through their family, through their spouses, through their kids. But these kind of basic elemental beliefs drive people, and sometimes drive people to do really stupid things.
Yeah. We have some questions from the audience. Susan Andrews is asking about how law enforcement members have been associated as supporting white supremacy groups. And I know that I believe I remember that there was a time quite a few years back where there was some kind of a shooting range that the sheriffs were using that was also being used by some of these groups. And I know that the sheriffs reached out and cut that off, but do you get that feeling?
So I've also heard that rumor, and I don't want to speak for the rest of the country because things absolutely happen. And I don't know any active Proud Boy members or white supremacist members that are part of law enforcement. I know that there have been people that were associated with law enforcement go out and go shooting with people, and then realizing that they were part of a group, and then were counseled to stop or got in trouble for that. So I don't think it's absolutely possible. That is absolutely something that we watch for, and I know that the sheriff's office is very concerned about how anybody that works for the sheriff's office interacts with others outside of work, and making sure that we are representing the sheriff's office in a positive light and not associated with these groups. So
excellent. This was quite a few years ago, and I'm sure that things have changed. We have another question, which is interesting that I never thought about. What about the KKK? I know they were really strong in Oregon at one point. Do we still have folks like that around?
So in the Portland area, I have not heard of any KKK members. Now, obviously, that has not always been the case. I remember this picture with KKK members and Portland police back in, I think, the 20s. I think Mount Scott was the KKK festival location in Clackamas County. And the KKK headquarters for Oregon is down in the kind of Grants Pass, Jefferson County area. So I believe that there are still active members down there. If there are active members up here, I have not heard of them or seen them. It's not to say that they don't exist, but they have not popped up on any of our radars in the area. So that's a good sign. But I know that they still are active in Southern Oregon, south of Eugene.
Yeah. Bruce?
Yeah, I got a couple of questions. Have the recent arrests and convictions for sedition of the Proud Boy leaders changed the nature or structure of the Proud Boys, particularly in Oregon?
That's a good question. I don't think that they've really changed the structure in the Portland area. I mean, obviously Joe Biggs and Tario have been to Portland a few times, and but the independent chapters, I would say, of Proud Boys, there's Proud Boys in Washington County, in Portland, Vancouver, Salem, all around, but those are run independently. And really the Proud Boys in Portland are different from the Proud Boys in Vancouver regarding some of their beliefs and who they allow or don't allow to be in their group. I do know that Proud Boys as a whole are kind of concerned about their image right now because of all the arrests. And again, with the recent kind of public fight that they had with white supremacists in Oregon City, which caused a splinter in Proud Boys and white supremacists, and the creation of Rose City Nationalists, and then joining the Northwest Nationalist Network. So I think that there is still concern that they are going to be viewed a certain way. And I would also say, you know, I've had conversations where I'm talking to two Proud Boys. One Proud Boy is saying, we are absolutely not a white supremacist organization. We kick anybody out that believes in those, in that belief. And the guy right next to him is making racist comments. So it's a really convoluted and really, from my perspective, interesting to see kind of the dynamic that they have, and it really ebbs and flows from time to time. The Proud Boys of 2017 are not the Proud Boys of 2023. So one of the interesting things about domestic extremism is that it's constantly evolving and changing. Unlike Islamic extremism, which kind of remains the same.
My second question has to do with the actions of the school resource officers, or as the Beaverton School District is calling them now, the youth service officers. Can you give us a little bit of information about what you tell the school resource officers about domestic extremism and how they can help students avoid being sucked into it?
Yeah, so like I said, I usually do about a 2-hour presentation with school resource officers, talking about in detail a lot more about than what I went into, and really what's behind their ideology and how, you know, each group has their own narrative, and we can counter those narratives or arguments, and maybe just open up that student's eyes into seeing things from a different perspective, which I think is incredibly important to do with extremism. And honestly, in the US in general, I would just really encourage anybody to listen to the opposition and understand where they're coming from. You don't have to agree with them, but try to see things through their eyes and try to understand where they're coming from. And I really think that will decrease the amount of extreme views and really by the polarization of really most of America right now, especially with the upcoming elections and the chance of it being very polarized in people's views. So
Yeah.
it's one of the things that I really preach hard to anybody that I talk to about extremism, is really talk to the person who is espousing this ideology and get to understand why that they believe the way that they do, and then present your own argument or present an alternative argument to what their argument is, and do it respectfully, do it, you know, through active listening, through empathy. But a lot of people may be interested in the ideology, but maybe not fully radicalized into the ideology. So drawing out as many people as we can from that ideology, I think, is important. Some people are obviously very just driven in with their belief system and will not listen to anybody, but I do think it's important to at least have these conversations. And they're kind of hard conversations because people believe all kinds of things, and through varying degrees of a belief.
So
Is it,
what I hear you
is
say
it too much
that-
of a generalization to say that people feel powerless or they're led to feel like they're victims? I know a lot of our politics now is all about you're the victim and I'm going to save you. Is that too much of a generalization, or can that be applied to a lot of these groups? It seems to me like, especially the incels,
Yeah. I would say, especially with incels, yes, that is absolutely true. It really depends, and really, extremism is made up of individuals and with just varying degrees of values and in how they see things. So that's why I say it is important to talk to somebody and really figure out what they are thinking and why they are thinking the way that they're thinking, and then go from there and figure out what motivates them or what will demotivate them. I will say that nobody, I think that one of those things that Washington County does very well, and Clackamas County, is if there is violence, people are held accountable. In Multnomah County, that's not the case. So it's a challenge because these people absolutely spread to the outer parts of Multnomah County and Washington County and Clackamas County and Clark and Marion, but holding people accountable for violent actions, but understanding where they're coming from is my big platform, I guess.
Yeah. Susan's had her hand up for a long time. I think we need to let her have the chance to speak. Go ahead, Susan, you can speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
We
Yep.
can.
Excellent. Hi. At the beginning of the presentation, Jeremy, you shared a bar chart or some information saying that we had a number of violent actions that had happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if you could speak to a little bit more detail behind, you know, what falls into that definition. For example, does intimidation and threats fall into that? I'm wondering if it tends to be equal between the organizations you're speaking about, or if it tends to be, you know, we see more violence in one group, and also whether it tends to be more business or individual based.
Sure.
And I'm talking
Those
about
are-
Washington County, especially.
Yeah, those are good questions. I had a slide and it didn't just have Washington County, but it did talk about kind of the differences between violence and this was just differentiating between right-wing extremists and left-wing extremists, which is always kind of the comparison, right? So right-wing extremists caused much more deaths and serious injuries. Left-wing extremists caused more damage, injuries, but not as much death. And it also goes to show what each group is using. Right-wing extremists tend to use guns. Left-wing extremists tend to break things and use bats. And we've absolutely seen an increase in left-wing extremists using weapons and training with weapons. But the amount of deaths and significant injuries has not caught up to right-wing extremists.
Sorry, can I interrupt for a sec?
Sure.
I'm sort of a background for this is during the protests, something I saw happening in Washington County was a lot of folks commenting on social media, like Nextdoor, or, you know, Facebook groups, that they were scared that the anarchists, not the, you know, Antifa, were coming to their front yards to break their windows and, you know, terrorize their families. And I was really surprised that people had that fear. So I'm interested in asking sort of this question, because it seems like Antifa gets associated with being much more threatening.
So I believe that you're talking about Sherwood, correct?
No, this was Aloha.
Oh, it was? Okay. So there was a post that I was aware of in 2020 that was created by a different government.
Oh, no.
And it had a number of disinformation being spread that anarchists were starting the fires in Clackamas County and then going around to white neighborhoods in Sherwood or other places and attacking families. That was not true. I don't know of any anarchists that started the fires in Clackamas County, and don't know of any that went around to different neighborhoods attacking people. I'm not discounting what happened in 2020 with anarchists, but there is disinformation on social media regarding extremist groups, and other governments use the US's vulnerabilities with extremism as a platform to create disinformation. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, I'm not saying that
Absolutely.
bad things haven't happened with extremists. I'm not saying that at all, but the particular thing that you're talking about was not generated locally. It was outside of the US. So
It just strikes me as, and again, I may be coming at it from my own bias, but it strikes me that the targets for Antifa, or the intended targets for Antifa, are, corporate America and Proud Boys and white supremacists. And it seems like the targets for the white supremacists are vulnerable groups in our communities. And, an agenda, they seem to be trying to, again, make a statement about losing ground in our morality. And so they seem like they're going at a level of trying to prove that. So again, I'm also coming at it from my own set of biases, but I wonder sometimes when people say there's violence in both these groups, if they're really considered equitable or not, when you look at it from the actual data.
the actual data, and this is done by CISA and a number of different RAND Corporation. There are many, many different groups that have done studies on this. And the death toll and significant injuries have definitely historically come from right-wing groups because of the weapons, because of the guns. And again, anarchists are, and I would include eco-terrorism, and I'm using that term loosely, as not as lethal as right-wing groups.
All right, thank you. I appreciate your answers.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Do we, pardon me, do we know if Tabitha is joining the meeting? We were hoping to have her tell us a little bit about Washington County community relations and stuff. I haven't seen her come in.
I don't see her.
No,
So
I don't either. I just sent her an email.
I have one kind of observation I'd like to reflect back. And it sounds like Antifa comes out in response to fascist groups. So would it be a fair sort of generalization that Antifa would not be a function without a fascist group of some sort to oppose?
I would not agree with that because it's their perception of a fascist group. Depending on the anarchists and their views or their level of views, any organization could be viewed as a fascist. If it has a leadership structure, it may be viewed as a fascist organization. I would, I think the anarchists they're absolutely upset with the US supporting Israel right now. And I don't want to get into like a political Israel and Hamas discussion, but it's their perception of that group that causes the motivation. And again, I was wondering if somebody would ask, what came first, the anarchists or the Nazis? And I'm not sure if it matters. It just matters that they're here now and this is what they believe. And they both go back to, at minimum, the 1930s, where the US was fighting Nazi Germany, as a minimum amount of historical context.
Well, what you said about active listening to people with opposing views really resonated with me, because I've found that that oftentimes people with extreme views have a very shallow amount of emotion, and once you get below that, you start discovering how much stuff we have in common. And so that working through the surface kind of rhetoric, which doesn't take all that long, but you have to hold your tongue and ask questions and really listen. You wind up getting to the point where, we all want to take care of our parents and our children. We all want to have food. We all want to be safe. There's so much that we hold in common, that the extremists and the polarization keeps us from seeing just how much of our humanity we share with each other. And so that advice to listen to somebody and ask the questions, even if you don't present a differing view, I think goes a long way towards establishing some commonality. So I really appreciate that advice that you pass out.
Thank you.
Well, I've been unable to reach Tabitha, and I'm not trying to cut off this discussion, but I promised some folks that we'd have some information about the scanner information, and I doubt that you have any connection to that. But as I mentioned at the beginning, there's a person that posts on both Threads and Twitter that calls themselves Washco Scanner, and I've been in communication with them, and they've been lamenting for months that the Washington County Sheriff's Office no longer posts anything on a service called Broadcastify, which I wrote about several months ago. But Tabitha did send me this information, which I'm going to go ahead and post.
Virginia, let's see if Detective Chester has some closing comments so we can go on.
I don't have any closing comments. Thank you for your time, though. I really appreciate it. And yeah, please reach out to me if you have any questions. I do struggle. I try not to answer questions that the sheriff should be answering. So if there are policy questions or things like that, I try to avoid all those. Yeah, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Well, we
appreciate you too. Funny, Susan said, how can the community reduce extramarital activity? But what she meant was extremism activity. And that's
auto-corrected on me.
Did you really say that?
I even
I had to laugh. But yes, are there things that we as a community can do?
Thanks, Jeremy.
Yeah,
aside from reaching out.
I think, like I've already said, just talking with, especially young people, asking them why they believe the way that they believe. Having these conversations with people is important as community members, because instead of causing division, you'll find that common ground and be able to make a connection with that person. And like I said, most people are looking for that feeling of belongingness and that connection. So, and I would say this is true of gangs, of any group. People are kind of looking for that. So just being open to listening to somebody and having conversations with people, even if it's uncomfortable, is what we need to do. And then obviously watch out for violence. And if you see some violence or something like that, please report it. It doesn't always result in jail depending on what it is, or if somebody is talking about violence, please report that. I oftentimes go out and just have conversations with people that are talking about violence to prevent them from engaging in violence and figuring out what needs to happen before they get to that point where they're doing a school shooting or, hurting somebody. So.
Well,
It's great advice.
thank you indeed.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
So this is the message that I originally got from Tabitha. Thank you for reaching out and expressing your concern about the temporary disabling of our radio scanning via Broadcastify. We understand the importance of transparency and staying connected with our community. Due to recent officer safety concerns, we have made the difficult decision to suspend the scanner temporarily. Our top priority is to ensure the safety of our officers and prevent any potential risks that could compromise their security during ongoing operations. Please be assured that this measure is temporary, and we are actively working with Washington County Consolidated Communications Agency, also called WCCCA, on implementing a delay in the radio feed to strike a balance between transparency and officer safety. We appreciate your understanding and continued support. But as I explained at the beginning, I first started looking at Twitter because there were things like reports about traffic accidents or there were a bunch of sirens in one of our neighborhoods. And because I feel that people that have information are calmer, it just reduces the general level of stress and tension in the community if people have some information about what's going on. And for the last number of months, we really don't get much of anything unless a citizen happens upon an accident or some kind of a crime scene or something going on and manages to report it and shares it with the Washco scanner people. But anyway, we never did get Tabitha, so we'll continue to try. I mean, I guess part of me is just a gossip and I want to know what's going on. And then I justify it by sharing it with my neighbors. But I really do believe that it just reduces everyone's tension level if they can understand why they heard sirens in the middle of the night. But yeah, it was a great presentation. And unless anyone has anything else to add, Bruce? Hello, Bruce. Bruce is deep in conversation. Hi, I think we're done. Our work here is done.
We very well might be done. I'm trying to think if I have anything for the good of the order that I can add. This Thursday, the county is holding an open house on the advisory boards and commissions. So if you were ever interested in serving on any of the county's 30 some odd advisory councils, you could go to the event center right by the Public Services Building, and I imagine there will be booths for each one of the advisory committees. I spent 30 years on the Behavioral Health Council, and I've also spent 12 years on the Sheriff's Advisory Council, the Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District Advisory Council. And I would say that you wind up doing a lot of learning, trying to keep up with the highly professional staff people that run the departments in the county, and a few moments of actually advising somebody. But the education that you get by serving on one of these boards and commissions lets you interact much more effectively, because you're talking the same language about the subjects that the professional people are dealing with. And I will say that any easy solution has already been put into play. So all the easy solutions are gone and we're just left with hard stuff to deal with. And that is nowhere better illustrated than with Measure 110, decriminalizing small amounts of hard narcotics. And then how do you respond to that? And the county is creating a detoxification center and treatment center called the Center for Triage and Treatment, and the CAT. And it's going into effect, I think is going to be active next year. So during the 90s, I was on the Behavioral Health Council, and the governing groups were run by Republicans, and public health services got cut quite a bit in the 90s, and we're rebuilding them now. And I think if we just hold tight and support the professional people that are doing things, they want to come up with solutions. So that's just one, that's the Behavioral Health Council, and that's just one of the 30 different advisory councils that will be featured in. And I will be at this representing the Committee for Community Involvement and all the CPOs in the county. So come down and either ask me a good question or give me an interesting idea.
Okay, thank you. I don't see anybody else with their hand up.
Here we got one.
Thank you, everyone, for coming, and we'll see you next.
We got one.
So did you already cover the like the zoning stuff that's coming up? Because I came to understand, you know, what could be done to provide a comment on a repartitioning in my neighborhood. And I think the deadline for you is tomorrow.
I'm not able to hear him very well. Can you?
He has a question about a local land use matter.
Oh. Well, there are many questions about land use.
Oh, no, about a.
Yeah, one of the ones that was on the agenda. So I pulled it up. I don't know how to use this time, because there's also, I see a bunch of other people on, so maybe they're not interested, but I just need an education of what you can do on behalf of my neighborhood to provide your feedback by tomorrow. What kinds of things are appropriate and what's the process?
Tell you what, I will handle that in person here and not put it into the meeting.
Yeah, we've got several. I'll do a quick screen share. We've got several land use issues before CPO 1 now, with a development application on Taylor Street, Malia Lane, a big one up at Mountain View Ridge, which is actually CPO 7, but it's a large 38 home subdivision right on the border of Multnomah County.
Yes.
And a plan amendment to change the use from R5 to R26. I don't know if that's what he was talking about.
Yeah, he was talking about Malia Lane.
Malia Lane, yeah. Well, it's, you know, the county really, if a development application meets their standards, they don't have a lot of options in denying it, or else they get sued. And so if the neighbors have strong feelings that something is wrong, they need to have, I hate to say this, but they need to have a strong case to present to the county. And it has to be more than that the neighbors don't like it, because none of us like infill unless we're making money off of it. But the county has standards, and the developers know those standards. And unless you have, like I said, a really good case, stuff gets approved, because the developers and landowners tend to have deeper pockets than the citizens do, and they threaten legal action. And that nobody likes that very well. I've
Okay,
become
Kristen.
more cynical over the years about this stuff. Fran,
If I heard the question, it was, this testimony is due by tomorrow. And I think one of the key questions was, is it allowed to have a 3-lot subdivision or partition right now, when there are S&R there, given the situation with the state and goal 5? And I think one of the key things to ask that they're asking is, what are the guidelines that we know of about land use partitioning, a property owner partitioning their own lot?
well, that's the lot right there. I don't know how much I can close this up.
Well, numerous. I mean, you can see the sort of the odd shape of it. I mean, it's just hard to, without any kind of information on what's going to be built, to know what it's going to be like, what's the impact. There's no parking, there's large trees, very, very nice large trees in the back. I mean, we just don't understand how they're going to be able to do this without, significantly negatively impacting, the neighborhood, traffic, parking, the whole thing. So, but I don't know if any of it has standing with the county. That's kind of what, we can just put it out there. But if there are things that are known that are like, these are things in the past that have been legitimate, concerns, then we can focus our energy on things that are constructive.
Can I interject here? Mary Lou Oberson from Tree Keepers has been following this. She's making some comments in the chat here.
Oh, great.
Probably a good idea for someone maybe to speak to Mary Lou, or have Mary Lou speak to this topic very briefly.
Yeah,
Right. So, do we want to, do that now, or should I follow up offline with Mary Lou?
no, I'm sure if you give your contact information to Bruce, he can get it to Mary Lou. There's Mary Lou's AIL. Is that AOL?
AOL.
Okay. Yeah. It's moberson@aol.com. Personally, I'm about to fall over because I've just gotten diagnosed with COVID and I need to go to bed.
Go hydrate.
So, can you reach out to Mary Lou?
Yes.
Great. Yep. We do
And
have
Mary Lou
people in the
just getting over
neighborhood that are
COVID.
looking after this stuff. Yep.
Yep.
Thank
Mary Lou
you.
got COVID too, so.
I thought I was gonna beat it, but. All right. Thanks everybody for coming. Another good meeting.